Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Naboulsi. This is episode 2 of our AI series. And last episode, we covered the fundamentals, what AI is, how it works. And today we're getting into the business side of things, how companies are actually implementing AI, what works, what's an expensive disaster, and how should business leaders be thinking about AI strategically. Eric Post is back, founder and CEO of Huzi AI. This is literally what Eric does every single day, so he's the best person to be able to answer these questions. He helps companies figure out how to implement AI in ways that actually drive value. So we're going to get into the trenches on this one. And if you run a business, lead a team, or you're just curious about how AI is changing the corporate world, this is your episode. Buckle up. Eric, let's talk business. How you doing, buddy?
Buckle up. When we tell people to buckle up, we better deliver, man. You know what I'm saying? So if they're going to
you're
buckle
going to
up, we
deliver.
better. Okay, let's deliver that. I love it.
I already know this is right up your alley, and things are just going to just explode. So let's kind of just dive right into it. You know, the first thing is making a case for AI in business. A lot of times, every company's talking about AI. Is this a justified expense, investment? Is it FOMO? Like, what actually changed that makes AI a business imperative versus a nice to have? You know, when you think about how do you make business case for AI as an investment, it tends to kind of boggle the mind a little bit. Like, what's the ROI conversation? How do you even measure this particular ROI? It's not like a traditional, hey, I'm going to spend $1 in hopes that I'm going to get 3 back when we're running advertising. Like, this is a new thing. You know, this is a new territory. So what's your take on that? Like, do you feel that it is justified, or people are just kind of in FOMO right now?
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. So there's inside that question, a practical question, a philosophical question, opinionated-based question. So let's start philosophical first. Really, when I talk about AI as part of being part of a business plan and part of your business strategy, substitute the word AI for leverage whenever you hear me say that for a second, right? Because I'm promoting leverage, and leverage is systems, technology, people, money, right? And so in business, part of the challenge of business is increasing the operational intelligence, right? And increasing the cognitive labor that you can harness inside of your organization. How smart are your people? How experienced are your people, right? And so with AI, you just simply have not another piece of software. It's not another faster horse. I keep saying this. I'm going to say it until people really understand me. This is harnessing cognitive labor in a new way, and then focusing it on specific things, not because you can, but because you should. And that's a really fine line here. Also, to get into definitions a little bit, there's a lot of people talking about, well, we're going to increase our efficiency through AI automation, right? And so there's all these AI, like people building the N8N, automations, and now ChatGPT agents and whatnot. And really, automations have been around for a long time, but now it's just kind of like surfaced back up, like, oh, we can automate stuff because we have AI. No, you could automate stuff even before AI, right? You can have workflows and triggered workflows, even in your software, and use Zap and whatnot, without any AI at all. So whenever I talk to businesses, we pause on the whole AI conversation and start looking at the systems of the business. Because when a business has systems, that means they have specific parts that can be duplicated, whether that's in a system or technology or with AI. So we really started talking about, like, how do we improve systems through augmentation first? Then we start talking about automation things.
So I first of all, I love the fact that you said, let's replace the word AI with leverage, because that's the name of the game. Whether it's dollars and cents or some new technology, that's generally what we're looking at in terms of specifics. Do you think that there is a risk of waiting? Now, I'm kind of answering my own question here, considering the fact that this is a leverage that we could implement today, but there's also the other side of the token where people seem to fear.
Token. I like that you use token, by the way. It's a coin we're talking about. Yeah. It was cute.
I
don't know if that was on purpose or not, but that was good. It was nice.
I appreciate it. Try to make a pun from time to time. But so from that regard, you do have people that fear it, very, very similarly to when social media came out and small business owners were afraid. Like, they didn't understand, spending hundreds, thousands of dollars, whatever, a month on something that they're already doing the traditional of it, which is, print, traditional media, word of mouth. Is there a first mover advantage, or is it okay to be a fast follower? Let's do that.
Oh yeah, I
Let's
think I like that. Philosophically, I think it's important to have a standard kind of adoption bell curve, right? You have your early
yeah.
adopters, your early innovators. You go through the list all the way down to your late adopters. As you look through that sort of standard, adoption bell curve, that's a healthy thing, right? You need people that are willing to be
Hmm.
pioneers and test and iterate and whatnot. And you have people kind of falling in. That's fine. You don't have to be the testers. What do they say, man? Like, the pioneers, get slaughtered and the settlers get fat, right? Like, there's an
Hmm.
argument for that, to be clear. You can learn a lot from the people that went too early or tried things too early, and you can see their failures and their successes, right? Because both leaves clues, right? So if you're aware, you
Yeah,
can look for
Facebook
those
wasn't the
things.
first, right?
Absolutely, right? So I can make a case for that, but really what I'm seeing is that the first mover advantage is not necessarily just implementation, but these are the ones that are increasing their AI fluency, and they're also running all these sorts of
Hmm.
tests and experiments. They've created some sort of culture of experimentation, some sort of culture of being open to new and different ways of thinking about processes and hiring and the whole business, right? Serving your consumer. That's the first kind of mover advantage. So the mover advantage not necessarily is did I have an OCR integrated into my workflow and I could have AI read my documents or something like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the thought leadership part first and really like understanding what it is, who the players are, what are practical use cases, and then start to train your team to be able to understand how do we look for these opportunities and then what systems and what communication channels we have to start experimenting and building little things that can radically transform your business. So it's implementation to second, but the first mover advantage first is like increasing the AI fluency, getting your whole organization curious, and then fanning the flames of creativity and seeing what comes out of your people, right? Like if an organization's got a team, 5, 10, 20, 500, 5,000, 50,000 people, doesn't matter, then there's a lot of not like people in your team are vibe coding, they're messing around with different AI systems, they're like playing around on after hours, they're doing some reading, like really see what you can to collaborate with your people to find these really cool use cases inside of all these different parts of your business, inside these different departments. So long-winded answer, Bodie, that the implementation is second. So the first mover advantage I'm seeing as a real advantage is in that mindset, reorientation, curious, creative, sandbox playing, experimentation sort of vibe. Then we can move to implementation after that.
That's fantastic. I appreciate that. It's a very thoughtful answer because I think most people would either say just jump in and be the first, raise your hand, get into it, or you're going to be left in the dust kind of scenario. And I just appreciate you taking the time. Leading into my next question is, where do we begin? Should companies, that are like, hey, I'm raising my hand, need an AI strategy. Like, what's step one? Do I build? Do I buy? Do I partner? You know, how do you make that decision? Is it, I mean, obviously it's going to be case by case, but let's just say generally speaking, like what would your best choice be?
Yeah, I think an organization, generally speaking, in today's world, would it be insane to do things too much in-house solely? Unless you have a dedicated team with a big budget, and this is all that they do, like all day long, right? Because we talk to people that are really great engineers, been in the business a long time, PhD, computer, masters in computer science and all that stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to solve problems using AI. They know how to code. They can,
Right.
get you an endpoint and like integrate an API and all those sorts of things. That is not what we're talking about. We don't need more chatbots in the world, right? We don't need more
Hmm.
just like, access to be able to chat with your documentation or whatever, or schedule things on a calendar, right? Those are not the things that most companies just need. As a matter of fact, we're seeing that most companies, when they do things like that, they start buying tools unless they've done the part that we were talking about earlier first, like prepare your organization for an AI,
Hmm.
culture, then it's just wasting money and
Hmm.
wasting time, and you're not going to get adoption. As a matter of fact, they're going to waste a lot of time, like, and get poor results out of AI, unless you've increased their ability to understand how to prompt or put systems in place where the systems that you build do the heavy lifting of prompting for them. Or you figured out that you don't need more chatbots and you actually get an AI that inverts the relationship and starts prompting your human beings with opportunities, signals, concepts, things to follow up on, tasks and whatnot. then you're starting to get really leverage out of AI systems. But unless you do the part where you get your culture ready, that's just you're expecting too much out of people to know what to ask, how to ask it, when to ask it, and for what reason, right? So again, I'm going to start like giving these really long-winded answers. I want people to kind of follow the train of thought a little bit here when we're talking about something as difficult as like, where do I begin, right? The question of where do I begin? So let's dive into that. Like, let's talk about a where do I begin example. Do you want to have a specific use case in mind, Mo, or a specific example of a type of business that we want to talk about?
Yeah. Real quick, I just want to not pivot, but just slight mention here. You said, about really getting the culture in place, and I think the biggest factor in terms of culture, especially with employees that are bringing on, I think the generality is that the fear or them being scared of being replaced, like AI is going to take my job. So I do want to just kind of put that as an aside as we were answering this question. But in terms of a use case, like, okay, a startup versus an enterprise company versus a solopreneur or, someone just getting started, right? So small budget. So like small budget, potentially outside money, and then definitely an established business. Those would be the three use cases that I can think of.
Let's talk. I actually think that what you were talking about earlier with the trust thing is a big deal in the
More
culture.
important.
So,
Okay.
every single organization's got a couple of gaps. There's one of the gap is a trust gap. Okay. The trust gap is between the employees and AI. Is it going to be giving me accurate information? Is it hallucinating? Is it lying to me? Is it going to take my job? You have a trust gap between the consumers and the AI. You have a trust gap between organizations that are putting AI between them and their clients. When the client's like, dude, I just want to talk to a people, right? I want to talk to a person. So there's a trust gap that people have to figure out how to close first. Then the second gap is in the knowledge gap. And this is, what are the tools? How do I use them? How do I talk to them? How do I set metrics that are measurable? What do I pin my ROI on? Like all of those things, you have this big knowledge, gap. And it's in that prompting sort of like relationship as well, like not knowing how to get the most out of your AI systems. And then also the last gap is like kind of like feeling like they're on an island. Like not having access to resources to where you can actually, get your hand held and get something off the ground, because we've seen the MIT study where they say that 95% of AI driven pilots are failing. That's a small sample size. They didn't actually interview all the stakeholders involved. It's a little bit misleading, but that's a shade of the truth for sure. And the number one reason why these were failing is because they didn't have the leadership that were in line with the process, the platform, the vision, and the leadership didn't understand the process first, and so it failed, right? So this whole part about like, are you ready as an organization starts with the top. Does the leader have a clear understanding of how to solve problems with AI, or are they just telling their team, hey, here's a budget, go figure it out? And I think that that's a huge problem. If the leader of the organization does not understand themselves, it's going to be really hard to get adoption throughout the whole organization.
Yeah, and I don't have my ear to the ground, perhaps to the same level that you do. I would say the most common would be that it's more of a, here's the money to do what you need to do, go for it, right? And it's usually like the chief technology officer, because there really isn't a chief AI officer, or maybe there is, but
I'm working with a couple now.
In terms of like an enterprise company. Yeah. which is awesome. I love to see that. But it's usually, somebody from C-suite or maybe on the VP level, like really making sure like, hey, we really need to be able to implement AI. It's this thing, blah, blah, blah. And so it turns out to be more of like, okay, well, you got this much to play with, go ahead and implement, do what you got to do. And more often than not, they don't really understand the complexity of how it's going to affect the company culture and how it's going to change the entire dynamic.
Okay, let's talk about the framework. I call it the 3 A's. And the reason why we developed this framework is to start closing those gaps that we were talking about, right? And the last one, by the way, is a strategy gap. So you have a trust gap, a knowledge gap, and a strategy gap. So these aren't just things that we've identified, by the way. These are the things that come out of like the Anthropic, state of work at AI report that came out, a couple studies out of MIT, one out of Harvard, McKinsey. Like there's other there's data now that we can start like making decisions based on. Over the last couple of years, man, it was tough because there's just a lot of intuition. Like my intuition is saying this, so we're going to make this way. But now we can bake our intuition and support it with some data. So these things are really important if you want to close those gaps. And we call them the 3 A's. And so the first one is is alignment. So the alignment is you got to align your strategy, your people, and your processes in a way that you can make a repeatable and duplicatable process using an AI system of some sort, an AI-powered workflow. Whether it's not, by the way, I want people to hear me too. It's not always automation. In fact, at Huzi, we talk more about augmentation than we do automation, right? So if you can augment all of your processes and augment your people and give them a Iron Man suit, right, that we've always talked about. If you give them the Iron Man suit, they're going to get a higher output. They're going to be way more superhero in their job than if you were just to automate them away out of their business. So our goal here is how do you like 2x, 3x, 5x, 10x your people before you start just automating everything, okay? So alignment is the first A. The second one is anchoring. How do you anchor and where do you anchor those people, processes, and systems in what kind of AI workflow? How do they access it? Who has access to it? Who trains it? Who decides? Who gives roles? What is the outputs that you're measuring? But you got to figure out how do you anchor those best practices and those processes into these repeatable systems, safety, security protocols, the whole thing. And then lastly, then you decide, well, how do we now, once we have these processes clearly defined and aligned, and we have to figure out where they're going to live and how they're going to live. Now you work on the amplification process. The last day is amplify. So now what you're going to do is in each one of these systems, you're going to make sure that the best practices of your organization is baked into each one of these systems. Okay. Now here's the nuance in the last part. Most people are bringing AI to their people. They're bringing an AI system, an AI augmentation, an AI automation system to their team, without taking the first step, and that's in making sure that AI is trained on the best practices, the number one salesperson, the number one operations, understands your SOPs. It cannot be another sort of chat bot that gives your people access to information, right? It has to be like steeped in the best practices. So amplifying best practices is the last thing. And so we want to make sure that every single system and every output, what you're doing with an AI system, you're realizing you're prompting your people to do something. When they read something from the AI system or it's great communication for your clients, these are human prompts, right? If we really be honest about it. So you want to make sure that those are the best practices and they're not just generic outputs from ChatGPT. So align, anchor, and amplify would be the process to go through.
Thank you so much for diving deep into that. One of the most, I think, outrageous in terms of like what they're actually doing is healthcare. I found that where AI is doing specifically within healthcare is pretty crazy. And then obviously finance, banking, manufacturing, whatever. So across all like professional services, there is a perspective that I specifically want from you, which is really the Huzi perspective. What industry specifically, A, are you serving with Huzi? And then what problems are you solving?
So right now in real estate, is obviously a big portion of where our customers are because first of all, I know that space. I spent 20 years plus in this space and I know to speak the language. And I think that's an industry, an honorable industry that needs a lot of improvement. And I think apathy and mediocrity has really crushed that industry for a long time. But there's some amazing professionals, mortgage professionals, title professionals, real estate professionals that are super honest, hardworking, dedicated to their craft, and they love helping people buy and sell homes. They love the idea of really supporting people during those life-changing moments, right? As did I, as I was working in that space. I think it's a great. That said, not everybody in that space is that way, right? And so one of the things I'm really most excited about is that we're partnering with the best teams, brokerages, mortgage companies, and whatnot that are dedicated to providing a transparent, consistent, and excellent experience to the consumer. And we're transforming their business from the inside out by helping them just simply be more efficient, more educated, being able to like 4x the outputs of their teams, not contributing to the noise, but literally making each person on their team superhuman, right? So when they show up to the listing appointment or they show up to the buyer consult meeting, they are armed to the teeth and they are never going to lose a buyer consult meeting. They're never going to lose a listing presentation, right? They're going to dominate their markets in this way. So any knowledge-based service industry, those top people, that are raising their hand, be like, I want to serve my customer like they've never been served before. Those are the people that we're partnering with, Mo, in every industry. We got some marketing companies now, real estate companies now. We're looking at coaches in different spaces, because coaches are the ones that are like trying to like level up an industry. So we're focusing on coaches because those are the people that are aggregating the professionals in that industry, like raising their hand saying, I want to invest in myself, invest in my business. So we're working with coaches to work through coaches to their people. And that's been a great community that we've been serving to, is the coaching community.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. I don't have the experience and expertise you do, but I do know, I have a lot of people, a lot of friends in the space of real estate and lending. And I know that when they were starting out, being able to have something like a Huzi would have been the absolute leverage arm to exponentially grow their success within a shorter time frame, just because you have a lot more at your disposal that you could deploy. And that could be said for any business, but like you're starting out, you don't know how to necessarily read contracts, and then you have to deal with title, and there's a lot of legal stuff, and then you have to focus on how to market yourself, and then how to talk to people, and better your sales and your negotiation. There's just so much going on, and a product like Huzi or a Huzi would have been quite the competitive landscape. Excuse me, the competitive. I can't even think. My words are just leaving my brain. But anyways, it would have given them a competitive edge. That's what I was trying to say.
This morning. You need more ginkgo biloba, buddy.
What's that?
You need more ginkgo biloba this morning.
I know. I do. I ran out of my alpha GPC, so it's just the lion's mane this morning.
Oof.
Come on, lion's mane.
Let's go. Well, let me hit you with this idea of some of our coaches are telling their clients that their very first hire or their very next hire should be Huzi, meaning not a company, but a subscription to an AI platform like ours, because they're looking at what we call crunch the can. Is how do you start to have a playground? Like, so our system is so flexible, it's so easy to use, it's just drag and drop. They don't need coding, it's very approachable. So getting familiar with, I don't want to start with prompt, I want to start with context. I don't want to have conversations, I want to create repeatable processes. Right? When they really start getting into those systems, they start getting out of a single chatbot interface like on ChatGPT and get into something like our Canvas that does give it them a system where they can create repeatable processes, shareable processes with customers or internally, right? And start understanding, I actually can get a superior output out of AI if I worry about context before prompt, right? These are all things our system just allows our customers to do naturally. And so it's our coaches. I don't have to use this tagline. Our coaches are telling people your first hire or your next hire needs to be the Huzi AI, right? And that's because they understand leverage. How do we not delegate and automate your way out of the business, but how do we leverage you to the point where you are freaking unbeatable? And so, we need to be most real estate agents' next hire is an AI system like ours first in their business.
My next question is going to sound, I know it's going to be biased, and for the people listening, I understand, but I will preface it by saying that you are an honest and fair person. So I'm going to ask you this question. Do you believe that AI can be a sustainable competitive advantage, or does everyone end up with the same access to the same tools?
Yeah, the thing I want people really clearly hear me say is that AI is not going to make your business easier. It's not going to make your life easier. Mm-hmm. It's making the industry raise the bar in every knowledge-based service industry. So because everybody has access to a ChatGPT or can, affordably afford something like Huzi or something like that, it is not access to the tool that gives you the advantage. It is your mindset, your strategy, being able to close the three gaps: your trust, knowledge, and strategy gap. Those that figure out the best way to have a system that's reliable, to have a strategy that's overarching, knowing it's just not buying more tools, but have an overarching AI strategy and a doctrine and a mission for it and the whole thing, like really getting honest about it. And then lastly, the knowledge, increasing your AI fluency. Doing those three things are necessary. It's not getting an enterprise account on ChatGPT or Perplexity or even Huzi. It's not that at all. You have to close those three gaps faster than your competitor. And when you close, then you have an advantage. And it's just not a light advantage. It is a massive competitive advantage because there is no more competitive advantage besides your mindset now. Besides your strategy, besides your focus, your ability to execute. Those are your competitive advantages now. It's not your website anymore. It's not even really your intellectual property, right? Like we have to really be honest, like what is your real advantage in today's system? It's your ability to be resourceful, to be creative, to close those three gaps, and to be able to have a OODA loop that you're closing faster in these processes and these decision making than your competitor. And if you could iterate faster and improve your business, like over time, 2 millimeters a day, you're going to crush them in the long term. So also maybe just to lower like stress, if there's somebody like overwhelmed by AI or whatever else, I would not think of this whole thing as like, oh, I need to go out and redo my whole systems and redo everything. It's small little changes over time, 2 millimeters each day, right? Just small little changes each day. And at the end of the week, you've made some progress. At the end of the month, you've made a lot of progress. At the end of the quarter, you made a lot of progress, right? Small little changes, testing, trying different models, seeing how it works, trying a little workflow, getting feedback from your team, getting feedback from your customers, but doing these things constantly. And all of a sudden you'll look back in a year from now and be like, oh my God, I've really changed it. Is those that try and make this huge plan and do this revamp of everything. It takes a year to do it and they roll it out and it's a flop because they didn't like test along the way, right? They didn't iterate along the way. So just make sure, I want people to think of it could be a very gradual, like crawl, walk, run approach to your AI implementation in your business.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I want to ask you a really tough question. From my lens, it seems like a very tough question, but it might be an easy one for you. Do you think, based on the trajectory of where everything is headed, do you see AI native companies disrupt incumbents, or do you believe that these incumbents will adapt? Do you believe that companies like Huzi and Perplexity are just going to continually adapt in order to not only set the standard, but try to rise above it and create ultimately a new standard or a new column, if you will?
Oh, I hope so,
In the
man. Like
aspects.
any entrepreneur out there, any startup, anybody working from your freaking garage or your bedroom or your Starbucks coffee shop or
Hmm.
whatever, you have every ability to disrupt the big guys right now. I'm actually in conversations with companies where I'm competing against Google and OpenAI right now. Right? Like me, this little company, Huzi, out of this bedroom. I'm in an Airbnb right now because we had a house fire, so I'm not even in my house. I'm in this Airbnb office competing with these mega companies for these big accounts because you can, right? Because now
Hmm.
the playing field has never been more level ever in every industry for anybody to take market share and to unseat your competitor and to unseat the incumbents in the space. I've never seen in the history, and I've studied history. I love business. I love psychology. I love studying the cycles and seasons and things. I've never seen
Hmm.
something like this at this moment where the playing field has been more level. Can we use an example of real estate just to flesh out this
Please,
idea for a
please.
minute?
Yeah.
So as an
Yep.
example, right, the behemoth in the real estate space is Zillow, right? It's because they got upstream of the industry in the consumer relationship because the internet was a place of things. It was a place of listings.
Yeah.
It was a place of rates. Okay. So the people went to look for listings. They went online and Zillow got upstream of that. That stream is gone now. The internet is now a place of conversations, not a place of things, right? So Zillow has to like compete to be part of the conversation that ChatGPT is having with their customers, that Google is having with their customers, and Gemini, that Grok is having with their customers. They have to inject themselves in the conversation. So you just saw a few weeks ago, they did an integration with ChatGPT, Zillow did, because they are recognizing that really what Zillow.com is going to quickly become is a back end. Okay, it's not a front end anymore. People aren't going to go to Zillow.com and look. They're going to go to their AI and talk about like buying a house in a certain area.
Yeah.
And the AI will
Yep.
go to Zillow.com and use it as a resource
Do the research.
to bring up referrals of agents and lenders and properties to listings and whatnot. But it needs to be, it's a back end, as same with CRMs and whatever. It's a back end now, and your AI is your interface. So the conversations are happening, and that's the transition. So a single individual or a brokerage or a thoughtful, mortgage company right now can get upstream of Zillow again because it's a new stream. So that's what I mean by it's a new like level playing field here that you can get upstream now of these incumbents like a Zillow or Homes.com or something like that because you can learn how to become a part of the new conversation in the new internet. You don't have to worry about competing of the internet of things anymore. And this is a really exciting time for people to understand that.
No, I think that's hugely important, especially considering that these these vendors, these OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Grok, they represent fundamentally different philosophies, not just for enterprise AI adoption, but in terms of like strategic priorities, beyond just model performance and whatnot. And so do you think that we should be thinking about in terms of like, how should enterprises think about vendor relationships? Should it be more the specific use case, or does it line up with my philosophical, moral agenda, what have you? Is vendor lock a real concern for the foreseeable future? How can we future-proof your AI strategy when the technology is changing so fast? And as soon as we learn something and adapt to something, it's just gone with the wind, or there's something new and we have to learn something else, which is the whole, the epitome of what technology is, I guess, by definition, right? It's the acceleration of new information multiplied times whatever. So
we have Meta, Grok, Google, Anthropic, and OpenAI. Let's say that these are the big players for the frontier models. Okay?
Yeah. Yep.
If I was the head of a large company, you're going to be forced with a decision. Okay, do I partner with an OpenAI and an enterprise? Do we get Claude, right? Like, do we just lean all the way into the Google workspace and have Gemini all up in our products and all those sorts of things? You're going to be forced to make these decisions. What is going to happen when you do that? You're going to have an experience like when the whole world's shifted from GPT-4 to GPT-5, where you had access to a 4, everyone was happy with that kind of level of like communication and the way it was writing, and they're getting familiar with it. They launched GPT-5 on us. People didn't have the same sort of reaction. As a matter of fact, when you look at OpenAI's market share, it's going down as just straight down, right? I'm talking about the API usage of their business, not consumer facing, like, hey, I have a boyfriend problem and stuff. We're talking about business for a minute, right? Their market share is going down. It went from about 50% and it's like 27% now. Okay. At the same time, Anthropic went from like 7% all the way up, and it's the highest now currently. It's the highest API usage is Claude now, right? Google is just in a straight line up as well, okay? Like Meta is now at going down. It took a pivot, it's going down now. My point with this, if you lock yourself into one of those technologies, you're at the mercy of what that company decides to do or not do with their models. Do they decide to place an emphasis on video generation, but you don't want emphasis on video generation, you want text generation, right? So you're going to be forced to make that decision. The reason why we have an advantage sometimes is because we are an aggregate of those technologies in one platform. So your people, you and your systems, you have the ability, like, hey, if for this specific task, the Gemini 2.5 Pro is a better model, great, it's all in there. You just simply select from that option. So being able to pick the best AI model that picks the best outcome, that picks for the best task, I think is hugely as an advantage. It's wildly flexible. So I think that's why our platform has an advantage in cases like this, because yes, data privacy and security is top. So we have to have our enterprise grade level services and security and processes. But once you have that in place, then why wouldn't you want a flexible sort of interface? We have the best generation for text, images, and video, right? Why wouldn't you want a consolidated, curated platform instead of just a one-to-one? We're at the mercy of like how those models change. So, Mo, does that make sense? I just want to be clear. Like,
yeah, I was actually reading. I made a little cliff note. AI News, which I think is artificialintelligencenews.com and Luna.com. They were talking about how 92% of large enterprise companies right now are operating in multi-cloud environments, not just specifically for redundancies, but to be able to harness the best of the breed, right? The best of the best capabilities across the board, which is essentially what you're building, what you've built, and is kind of answering that question, which is, I don't see just a one-size-fits-all type of scenario, because that doesn't really make any sense. I mean, we live in a world where we order things on Amazon, but also go to Costco, and then specific things we like to get from different grocery. You know what I mean? So it's like it doesn't make sense, right? Why is there this rise in concern over like vendor lock? Because I keep reading and hearing about this like vendor lock. Like, oh, you're going to get locked into a specific, particular vendor, and you're going to be, if, like you were saying earlier, like if you're going to be in the Google ecosystem, that's it. I personally can't do that. I know there are people that do get locked in those kinds of situations. But at the same time, like then you tend to be a little bit more rigid in your thinking, and that's not really great for a CEO. It's not really great for a founder, startup, whatever. So then you have two choices. You could either build your own AI using those APIs, partner with someone that's already done it really, really well, or just use a generic tool and just subscribe to all of them. That's kind of like
Yeah.
where I see things.
Yeah. And that's what
Yeah.
people did. Like the tech stack bloat is a real thing. And like employees don't want another username and password. And, and people don't either. And
Hmm.
my cost of my subscriptions just shot through the roof for the last few years because I'm trying everything and testing everything. And that's not sustainable. And that's a distraction, right? But now we can kind of clearly see who the front runners are. We can clearly start to see what are the best use cases that are practical, that are realistic, that take into consideration the limitations of both the technology and your organization, right? Because let's say that the AI could do everything that as advertised without any hallucinations and no issues and all those sorts of things that ran perfectly all day, every day. You still would have the work of like
Hmm.
getting your people to use it, to train it, and whatnot. So it still is a constant area of emphasis in the business. The payoff, though, is worth it, right? The payoff, if you close the strategy, trust, and the knowledge gap, then it's worth it. If your strategy is, I'm going to buy a bunch of tools, tell my people to go figure it out, it's obviously not the right strategy. So we have to go through a thoughtful process to align, anchor, and amplify. You have to make sure that your culture is ready, and then you're going to have a hard time being beat, right? Because you have a culture that is willing to think new, think differently, be excited, get creative, be resourceful. Then you've got a culture that's a winning culture.
Thank you. Last question on culture and team. I've been really wanting to know this. Everybody right now is searching and screaming for some talented individual, that is an expert, quote unquote, expert in AI. Do you believe that specific role is scarce? Is it hard to fill? Have you seen, a rise in particular applications with that specific role as a job description, or maybe that's just something that is self-taught, self-learned, whatever? And I also know that there's a lot of misalignment or maybe a little bit of delusion from people actually thinking they're experts in that field and they have this thing, but really, so I don't know. I'm hearing both sides. Do you think that AI talent is scarce? Yes or no?
Well, the people that claim to be AI experts is not scarce. So without like doing a whole rabbit hole about what's going on in society and social media and people wanting to make a quick buck and all that kind of stuff, let's talk about what
Yeah.
expertise means. So
Yep.
almost anybody now can figure out how to, what's an API and how to make a chat bot and how to rag, information. Like those things are not a high level, gated behind some expensive paywall and only a certain number of people know how to do these things. Expertise for me, if you're going to work with an AI expert, they have to have not just the understanding of the technology, but they have to have a deep understanding of your industry, right? And I also believe they
Okay.
have to have a deep understanding of people because what we're talking about here, again, is not another piece of software. It's like another person in the room. It's another collaborator in the room, these AI systems. Your people are going to be collaborating with the things that you build and systems that you build, not delegating to. And so, you have to have a person and expertise or a company like Huzi that has not only AI expertise, but has people and human nature expertise, and then also has industry expertise. Because if you hire an expert to come in and they are, if you need something's wrong with your heart and you go to a generalist, you're going to miss a lot of expertise that's needed to diagnose properly something on your heart, right? So that sort of expertise that we are easy to understand in like finance and health and whatnot, and even mechanic. Like if I have a BMW, I go to a European or a BMW specialist for a mechanic, right? It's that same thing, but yet there's too many AI generalists. Like, yes, I know how to make a RAG system. I know how to do an automation for you, but they're not necessarily picking the best areas of maximization, and they're not necessarily understanding when I design a system for an industry, it needs to be designed for this specific set of nuances that I would only understand if I had been a practical practitioner in that space. So can I give you one more example, Mo?
Please. Yeah.
Okay. So give an example, because we talk about real estate today, I'm going to use another example. So most people that are like developing workflows in the real estate space, let's say it's in the transaction management space. They're building an AI powered transaction manager assistant in their brokerage or their real estate team or whatever. Most people are thinking about it, well, we need to manage the transaction, so we need to manage the paperwork. And so they train and they build a system to manage the workflow. But if you really understand that space, if you've worked in that space for more than 20 years, like I have and my whole team has, you'd understand that the paperwork is a result of communication. You don't manage paperwork, you manage communication. And when you manage communication properly, then the paperwork magically happens, right? It's an outcome of good communication. But people are designing systems to manage paperwork, and that's why they're getting it wrong. And that's why they're clunky and clumsy, and there's too many clicks, and it's not really moving the needle. But if you manage the communication between all people, then the paperwork comes, and that's how like we would approach building a TC as example. In fact, we are, right? Because you understand that that's an industry nuance that if you just talk to an AI expert, they go, oh yeah, I can build you an AI, transaction management copilot. But they would be maximizing the effectiveness of the platform for the entirely wrong thing, and that's paperwork, not conversations. Okay. So that's one, like if people in the real estate industry will probably click, if they hear that, they'll understand that. If you're not in the industry, you wouldn't know that. But that's what I'm talking about. That level of nuance radically transforms the systems that you build, how you build them, who you build them for, and then what you maximize towards.
God, there's just so much good information, man. Thank you. My gosh.
I hope that was a clip.
Yeah, no, totally. It's just such a good chunk of information that is multifaceted. So you might have to listen to it a couple times, but it's very important. Leading to kind of my next question. So in terms of ethics and governance, what are the actual risks that companies face with AI, like regulatory, reputational, operational? What your personal experiences lost me?
No. I'm super glad that you asked this question. And this is also an industry nuanced question, because a lot of what we talk about in a knowledge-based service industry is regulated by licensing and compliance and whatnot. And so if I was the leader, of a mortgage entity, let's say, compliance issues would definitely be high in my mind. If I was a leader in a real estate, brokerage organization or team leader, fair housing would be on the top of my mind, right? I would understand that. Mm-hmm. That said, you can do some things that are very strategic in the implementation that help mitigate this risk. First of all, again, going back to my idea, you go for augmentation over automation, which means you have human in the loop in your systems. You have people that are checking on and working with and collaborating with the AI systems to do things. Maybe you didn't take an hour task and just give it to AI and it's just a one-shot prompt and done, but maybe you took an hour task and now it's 10 minutes, but you're able to collaborate with the AI and the humans in the loop all the way, so you know that the output's good, you know that it's in compliance, you know that you're meeting fair housing requirements and all those sorts of things, right? So focus on the augmentation. That said, you can't play defense all the way to success. You have to have some offense too. So you have to be willing to take some of those risks that might feel uncomfortable at times, as long as you've been diligent with picking the right AI partner to help you like mitigate those risks, identify those risks. Your systems are in place to help provide guardrails to your AI systems and whatnot. And then your training is in place, so you make sure that your users have some agency in the output or have some agency in the workflow, and the users understand how to use it, what's happening, what to do if it goes wrong, how to report it, a feedback loop so you can continue to train and improve your model, right? As long as you're thinking about it that way, then the risks that are very real start to get much lower than the potential gain. Right. So I'm not saying that you set those aside and don't worry about those. But if you're thoughtful and if you understand the potential pitfalls, then you can mitigate those down to a very acceptable sort of risk tolerance level. Never to zero, but business is not about solving a problem. It's about upgrading your problems. Right. So your problem of like not having leverage is a bigger problem than figuring out how to like make sure that you have a safe, compliant, AI system where you're talking about ethics and meeting your regulatory requirements. And most importantly, you're meeting the expectations of your customer, right? So at the end of the day,
please,
I want to hear your question.
I was just going to say, like, I guess in that instance, like, when would it be appropriate to disclose that AI is involved in a decision, interaction, whatever? Like, obviously within the team is one thing, but like with your clients, with your customers, with your employees, what have you, when would that be appropriate?
I think that's a cultural decision I want to place on somebody. My default is transparent and disclose and dissolve, and it's always like, hey, I'm an AI assistant for Eric, or hi, I'm the AI scheduler for Mo. It's not like, hi, this is Mo, and when do you want to meet? People are trying to like replicate themselves and fake like they're everywhere all the time, and they duplicate their voice and all those sorts of things. To me, that's the opposite of what we were talking about earlier with trust. Like, there's a gap with trust. That's a real thing. Then in putting in things like that aren't completely transparent only exacerbate the issue, don't mitigate the issue. So that's my personal opinion. I know lots of companies, have a different opinion than that. Like, no, we don't need to tell anybody, and they think it's them, so we might as well think it's a real person. I don't know. I don't think that does you any favors. I don't think you get any credit for faking being a person. So to me, the risk of a malfunction there, and they think it's actually Mo or actually Eric, is too high. I think disclosing all the time when an AI is involving, in part of the conversation with your employees or customers is the right way to go.
Hey, listen, I agree. I think there's already this stigma around deception with AI. So like, I feel like the best thing that you can do is to be as absolutely transparent as you possibly can to mitigate any kind of nuance, altercations, question marks, so on and so forth. You know what I mean? That's just my two cents.
And
So
at the end of the day,
I completely agree with you.
At the end of the day, customers don't want more AI; they want more you. They want what you represent. Mm-hmm. So if you represent professionalism or promptness or a certain expertise, they want more of that through you. And so use the AI to give them more of you, right? Not more automation, not more. You don't get paid more to automate your business. You get paid more when you provide a better consumer experience, when you have a better product. Right? When you can get back to your customers faster, when you can, turn out a quote faster to them, right? When you can close a deal faster, when you can provide the necessary information to make a buying decision faster, right? When you respond to your leads faster, right? Like there's definitely like a reason to focus on the customer because that's who pays all of our bills. And a lot of companies and individuals are focusing on themselves and their processes internally. Let's radically transform the experience for the customer, and you radically transform your value, and then you radically outcompete your competitor.
I think that's such a valid point because I'm seeing, we're all seeing this, an absolute exponential rise of products being released with AI, right? Where they fall, they rise and they fall, what have you. But the biggest factor is that they're not focusing on the customer experience. They're not focusing on bettering their product. They're focusing on scale. How can we scale this as much as possible so that we can get, X consumers, X customers, X sales, what have you. Whereas I think if they focus on really bettering the product and the customer experience for the end consumer, it would it would solve their problem of scale. But anyways.
Yeah, scale comes as an outcome of getting that right? Like that's the outcome of it.
For sure.
And that's the natural, that's the least costly way of getting an outcome is for that to naturally happen as a result of doing an amazing job. You have to spend less money on ads, spend less money on marketing, right? So having just a fantastic product or service that's worth being talked about, both in chatbots with chatbots and also, one-to-one with customer to customer. And there's some really solid strategies as to people are starting to understand, how do you maximize your online presence and how do you maximize your kind of new way of looking at SEO to be part of that conversation, right? And what I also think businesses should be thinking about is that if they were in a chatbot situation, they're talking to ChatGPT and ChatGPT refers your company, and then that person then goes to your social media, and tries to check you out. But on social media now, you've decided that you wanted to AI automate everything. So it's just AI avatars and, like ChatGPT memes that it's been making or whatever. And it's not a person that's there, like with the smiling face, like ready to solve problems and give information and book appointments and whatnot. I think you're missing the point of social media. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So go lean into this like humanity, like renaissance for your social media channel, be more human there and using AI in other parts of the business, but not on social media as much. That would be my suggestion.
Which is the exact opposite of what Meta is doing. They're putting in more, especially with Instagram. They're putting in more AI into right now. Their newest update is stories, so that you can literally modify and generate a prompt and modify, an image or video to be able to. Which I understand, like it has its application, but yes. So with such an exorbitant amount of AI flooding all social media platforms, you're absolutely right. I think you should really focus on and go the opposite direction, focus on the more human side of things.
Every social media platform should be maximizing their platform for the AI influencer because they're going to save a lot of revenue by not having to pay influencers anymore. So I haven't talked about, a single business or like, we don't serve influencers, right? As an industry. It's a huge industry. Right. We'll make a lot of money doing it. That's not what we're doing because I think that's actually a dead industry now. Okay. So I'm talking about a small business owner or a medium business owner or a large business owner that they have a product and a service outside of just being an influencer, that's how they use social media, and stay away from the temptation to do what the social media platforms are doing by giving these AI tools because that's good for the AI platform. and that's good for the social media platform, not your business. Okay, because they're trying to like dislodge the influencer monetization pyramid that's been constructed over the last 10 years.
Yeah, they ruined the term influencer for me. When I used to think of an influencer, I would think like some high position of state, like an ambassador of some kind, like a real ambassador, not an ambassador of a product, you know, like the government, the United States.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just like, what's going on, people? Come on. Just sour taste
Yeah.
in my mouth. All right. Last thing. Are you ready for a rapid fire section? And I'll get you out of here as soon as
Let's do a
possible.
rapid fire and get out of here. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. All right, cool. So, all right, rapid fire. Number one, biggest business mistake with AI that you have seen, whether you're a personal or somebody else's.
Right to automation instead of augmentation. The companies that went right to automation early are actually like, oh no, we shouldn't have fired a customer service. We're going to hire those back. Oh no, we shouldn't have put this customer service bot in place of our customer service rep. We need to hire them. Like they're finding out that their customers and the AI systems they put in place weren't proper and they weren't pointed at the right problem. Is an example like I gave with the transaction management example. They pointed at the paperwork, not the communication. So having to redo the systems, right? So I think that it's simply a result of like buying tools instead of trying to have an overarching strategy. And it just takes a little bit more thought. It takes an extra few weeks to really get through that in many cases. Okay, that wasn't rapid fire.
Industry that's furthest. No, it's fine. It's fine. I could be the rapid fire start. I won't talk too much.
Okay. All right.
Industry that's the furthest ahead. All right. What do you think the industry that's furthest ahead in AI adoption right now?
Coding, engineering, the software.
Really?
Engineering. Yeah. And that's why we're actually seeing the Anthropic, market share really like take off because they understood to maximize their models towards coding. And so, we're really seeing like the vibe coding applications, internal coding applications. Every coder on the planet, is using Claude Code, it feels like, right? So, that is an industry that is absolutely seeing the highest rate of adoption because the engineers are now starting to see how to put it right in the workflows as developing products, right? Faster, 10x faster. So I think coding and engineering is my answer, bud.
Okay. What do you think is the industry that's furthest behind but shouldn't be? There's a twist. Furthest behind but shouldn't be.
Education.
Ooh.
Education.
Yep.
Straight up.
Yep. But that kind of falls across the board in almost all things.
Straight up education.
Education tends to be the first. Yeah.
We're talking about, and like we talk about the institution of education, right? So you have institutionalized learning, which means buckets of learning, like sixth grade, right? You have one system of teaching sixth grade. With AI, we should have like if there's 40 million students in elementary school. I don't know the numbers, so I'm just making up a number. Then with AI, you can almost have 40 million unique lesson plans today, right? Instead of this institutionalized learning. So we'd be able to meet every student where they're at. It was a beautiful world, right? So the ones that really need more help, should get more help. The ones that can advance faster should be able to advance faster, right? But this institutionalized learning and stuff is an archaic system that I think should be disrupted.
And I think they can do it because even public schools, I know this hands-on, they're handing out tablets with keyboards and all this tech and all this stuff for these kids, these middle school students, these elementary school students, and yet it's such an easy implementation. So I don't think it's an issue of funding. I think it's an issue of literal educating the educators or the institutionalized version of education.
Yeah, this isn't theory. There are schools now that are seeing a dramatic improvement of test scores and advancement of students now when they have fully AI-powered schools, and fully AI instructors with one assistant, but each student has their own AI instructor, right? They're seeing their test scores and everything just shoot through the roof, okay? So again, I'm not saying there's all bad teachers. There's nothing like that. Like, please don't twist my words here if anybody's listening to this. But as an institution, to institutionalize education going forward is a ridiculous premise, and we should have hyper-personalized adaptation, adaptive learning environment for every single student. That's what the kids deserve.
1,000%. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's my favorite answer thus far because I agree wholeheartedly. All right, next question. Build versus buy. I just want a default recommendation. Gun to your head. Build versus buy.
Right now, it'd be buy, because at how fast things are going, like the idea that you could do that internally for most companies, it's going to be buy.
Yep.
Right now. Yeah.
Cool.
It just for most companies. Yep.
This is a unique one. Should every company have a chief AI officer?
Every company should at least have a committee for it. Yeah. Everybody should have somebody designated as a head of the committee, no matter what the size of the industry is. At least, in their off hours, if you're small organization, you have the budget, somebody like appointed to it. If it's not you as the leader, it's somebody in your team that's dedicated to understanding it, or you somehow squeak out a little bit of a budget to pay somebody else to help you with it. But yes, Mo, 100%, without a doubt, yes.
Will AI replace middle management?
I hope so, actually. Yeah. That's a hope so, right? Like, the reason why middle management exists is to help keep things moving inside, like behind the scenes, like, coordinate between things and, the executive motions, and you got the people in the street motions, right? It's a necessary function today. So I'm not picking on middle managers. However, middle managers generally, add to the bloat of an organization, right? Like the bureaucracy of an organization. So if you can now make this part of your org chart and this part of your org chart much more effective and have much more clear ties to objectives and measuring and managing and results and whatnot, then you don't need that bureaucracy layer as much. So yeah, I hope so, for the sake of the organization, not for middle managers, but for the sake of organizations. Yeah.
All right, 2 more questions. What's the question CEOs should be asking but are not?
I'm going to say it's a flavor of the question that they're asking themselves is, how can we use AI? And then they fill in the blank, like to drive more shareholder, revenue, or to, increase our client adoption, or to lower our cost of acquisition, right? They're filling one of those things in. I think it should be kind of like the Jeff Bezos approach, which is, what problems do we have today that are also going to be around in 10 years from now? And those are the things you're going to want to solve first with AI. Because now you're not chasing the thing. You're not chasing the technology. You're not saying, I have this technology, what can I do with it? You're looking at your business through a thoughtful, long-term lens, and you're going to solve a problem that's going to be a problem for a long time. That's the thing to focus your resources on, right? So it's a shade of the question they're already asking themselves, but just nuanced and directed a little bit differently.
Fantastic. Last question. If there's one thing business leaders should take away from this conversation, what is it?
Is that the playing field's level, that the opportunity is there for anybody who seizes it. Any organization that seizes it, it doesn't matter the size of your organization. Every single organization's place where they at in their market share is a very temporary situation currently. It could be taken away or added to like this now, faster than ever before, right? Like you can have an exponential uptick and an exponential decrease now. So the speed of change is something that's important. And I think that that's an optimistic viewpoint. So lean in like, if it's a level playing field, now I can just simply be smarter, more tactfully, more caring, more thoughtful, more comprehensive in my thinking than my competitor, and I will win, right? And if you have that level of commitment, then you're going to have that level of success, period.
Dang. Eric, man, thank you so much. This has been absolutely incredible, incredibly powerful, and so much knowledge, very specific. Everybody that's been tuning in, we're so excited that you guys decided to spend this hour and a half with us. Please tune in for our next episode as we talk about AI creativity, one of my favorite subjects, art, writing, design, and content in terms of artificial intelligence. How can that be applied to you and your business? Thank you, Eric, so much for being on the show yet again, and we're excited to have you next episode.
See you soon.